We know. The bats have to get going. I get it.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere else but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Grant McAuley. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Our Atlanta Baseball Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we'll talk about how one guy has maybe put in enough work to erase the memory of another, and we'll talk about whether or not we should be concerned about the Braves operating with an abundance of caution. But first, let's talk about if last night's W is enough to eliminate all those L's living rent-free in our heads. So, Grant, the Braves got a much-needed 4-2 win against the Boston Red Sox Tuesday night. Is this the win that finally maybe gets the Braves back on track?
I mean, it's a start, but you just look at the trends lately, and what you need to see is something maybe a little bit more explosive, demonstrative from the offense. We didn't see it in last night's game, but what we did see was some key hits. We saw a lot of guys contributing in different ways, whether it was what the pitching staff was doing, some nice defensive plays. Jared Kelenic with that long-awaited first home run, that certainly was good to see. And then Marcell Ozuna coming through yet again to put the Braves on top. So you add that all up, it was a good win against the Boston club that certainly has a good pitching staff. But I don't necessarily know that you can move on from that road trip and not at least be a little bit concerned about the lack of runs. Atlanta went through a 9-game string where they scored 2.88 runs per game on average. That's not the offense that we were promised, and not the offense that the Braves are capable of being either. So as they start to adjust that, whether it's Acuna, Olsen, I know Austin Riley's shown some good signs over the past, week or so. That's going to start to change. And talking to some of those guys before this Boston game, there is still a confidence that, look, we're going to continue to do things the way we've done them. We're not panicking. We know the results are going to be there, and it, I think, can happen at any time. And that's the belief that that club has, and that's why I think the Braves are in a good place to navigate through what has definitely been the biggest valley that we've seen offensively in quite a while.
Yeah, Braves were held to 7 hits, and that's something that you're not, like you said, accustomed to seeing. And even Brian Snitker said post-game, it's been a rough thing to go through. We're not through it yet, but yeah, this kind of gave you some signs that, hey, maybe not so much, Grant, that we're turning the corner, but maybe we're getting in position as the Braves club to turn the corner. Jarvis, what about you? Like Grant said, solid, because anytime you can take a W, you get the W. But do you feel like it's more of not so much that they're on track, but maybe they're getting to a place where they can get back on track, and that's a start?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a power outage for sure. I feel like Georgia Power has a whole bunch of phone calls and they just haven't been able to answer the phone, for the Braves right now. So, but the one thing that I do like though is the consistency that we've seen from Reynaldo Lopez, because for him to be able to get into trouble last night, you only give up one run, and then you have Bummer come in, hit the ball off his leg and everything, and then he's been able to get out of that inning and striking out 2 guys in the 6th. So it's just that's the thing that kind of gives me hope, right? That they're going to figure out, because you have that piece or that entity of your team being able to be consistent and keep them in games as they go along. Now, granted, I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but that Dodger series, it kind of got a rock. But but other than that, though, I feel like they've been able to hold it down, and to see Reynaldo Lopez continue to do what he's been doing and being the model of consistency on the mound, that's been encouraging for sure. And I think that, eventually Georgia Power going to answer the phone.
And Grant, I wanted to go back to Aaron Bummer, because we haven't talked a lot about him so far this season on the show, but for him to be able to get the top of the order out and, like you said, kind of limit that damage, I think that's important too, because this pitching rotation, this bullpen, just overall, in spite of everything that happened on that West Coast trip last week, they still have been kind of the bright spot so far this season.
Definitely. And on that road trip, I mean, they kept most of those games
Yes.
manageable. I know Saturday's loss in LA was pretty lopsided. Max Fried made a couple of mistakes on Sunday, but it wasn't like that game got completely out of hand. The Braves offense just wasn't able to do things it needed to do. We look back on that road trip. If they're able to figure out a way to win at least one of those one-run losses in Seattle and hold on to win that first game at Dodger Stadium, you come home with a 500 road trip, might think, okay, well, not everything's going right, but our pitching is keeping us in it. And that's true, regardless win or loss. So you've got to score more runs than your opponent. I don't think we have to sit here and talk about how important it is to outscore the other team if you want to win. But yeah, Aaron Bummer, a number of other relievers can come in and make a difference in last night's game and needed to, get that job done. Unfortunate batted ball luck that, it caromed away from him and the Red Sox were able to tie the game up there. But damage control was the order of the day right there. And then to see Jesse Chavez and Joe Jimenez and Raisel Iglesias come in and be able to keep the Red Sox off the board. A great diving catch by Adam Duvall, who had checked into the game a little bit earlier when Jared Kelenic checked out. We should talk about that duo in left field defensively. They may not be putting up the huge offensive numbers, but man, they have made some throws, some catches, and some plays out there that have been key. And there was another one in last night's game, and I'm sure the bullpen appreciated that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Grant, because I thought about us talking about that each and every week. Like one of the things we always come back to is that defense. Their defense is, and it's not just what we've become accustomed to, but it's actually a tick better this season and probably so necessary with all of the offensive challenges, the offensive woes that we've seen so far. So yeah, you're absolutely right. For Duvall to be able to do what he did at such a clutch moment is so very powerful. And I think, to that point, Jarvis, last night's win, when you look at it holistically, that's when maybe you can start getting that bad taste of the Dodgers series out of your mouth. Now, is it out completely? No. Does that series and the West Coast trip overall probably still live a little rent-free in your head? I probably say for me, it does, but it's living maybe less rent-free. Like it's about to be vacated in a minute if we can maybe get one more of these solid wins to kind of wrap this Red Sox series up and feel like, hey, the Braves were able to come back home and get a reset.
Yeah, I'm scared of Shohei Ohtani. Can I say that? Is that okay?
I think the whole of Major League Baseball.
Yes, he's really good at baseball. So, I'm gonna take him out of it. So that will continue to live rent free, like you mentioned, in my head. Like, dang, he is a very good baseball player. But outside of that, though, I think that overall, like you said, the pitcher staff wasn't horrible, right? Now, granted. One thing that it really just popped out to me was Bryce Elder, his performance, because I feel like he's been living on the edge anyway, and he's been able to get out some sticky situations, and I think that he got himself into one that he could not get out of with seven on runs on 7 hits. It's just, and we're not surprised, right? We knew what we were getting ourselves into when we went out to that series. That is a very, very good lineup, and just what Mookie Betts and guys like that to be able to do at the plate. And also the guys went from outfield to shortstop. That is absolutely ridiculous to me, for him to be able to do that as an adult in the Major League Baseball. So I feel like overall, I knew the expectations were going in, but for them to get out with at least the opportunities to get those wins early on, I feel like once this, like you said, this power outage kind of we get out of this, I feel like the more and more of that series will kind of be in our review.
Yeah, and Grant, I don't want to go too far back into that series because something positive did happen last night. Hopefully you'll get another win today, and that takes you into New York on a high and on a positive note. But I did want to ask just one follow-up question before we wrap up. And, Jarvis, definitely, if you have something on that, and chime in as well. But talking about Bryce Elder and sort of that fit spot, Grant, I just wanted to kind of say, here we are kind of a week later. And as we continue to kind of look at what that fit spot looks like, what are your thoughts on Bryce Elder and how he fits in and kind of what you see the Braves doing over these next couple of weeks in that spot in the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bryce Elder is here to stay for now. And if they need to reassess that as they go along, they certainly can, whether that's with AJ Smith-Shawver or some other, option that maybe is pitching well down there, or if, they just have some struggles from Bryce Elder and feel like they need to go a different direction. But the Dodgers lineup is a rough ride, like Jarvis was talking about. I mean, this is a lineup that starts with 3 MVPs and one of the best players that we'll ever see in our lifetime, and he's only operating at 50% capacity because he's not pitching this year. which
Yeah.
should also just be scary to everyone.
Yeah.
And a
Be very
reminder of
afraid.
just how talented this guy is. I mean, he's not even able to do half of what makes him so valuable, and he might be the best hitter in the National League. And if he's not, the guy that's leading off for the Dodgers right now, at least in the early 5-6 weeks of the season, is making a pretty good case for that as well. And if you get through those guys, how about you deal with MVP Freddie Freeman? Will Smith's having a career year. Max Muncy's certainly a powerful bat. I mean, the Dodgers may not have, at least coming into the year, that 1 through 9 that we felt like the Braves have, but they've got about as powerful of a run through a lineup as you can possibly ask for from right side, left side. They have got some pretty serious bats to deal with. And I think that's what Bryce Elder ran into as much as anything. The walks did not help him. The home run ball was certainly a problem. Max Fried ran into trouble with a Shohei Ohtani home run first thing on Sunday as well. And that kind of set the tone a little bit for that game. But again, you go back to this Braves offense. Once they start hitting, you're going to see a very different level of play from this club, and they are going to start hitting. They came off a 7-2 homestand to go 1-5 on the road. So who's to say that they don't have another, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 that they could reel off and maybe get themselves back. And, the month of June is right around the corner. In the last 2 years, that for whatever reason is when the Braves have played some of their best baseball. Who's to say that that's not in the offing for this club? But they got to start hitting again. And again, just not to belabor the point, they got a group that's going to do it.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm like Grant. I'm not too concerned, but there are trends that you like to look at, right? Like especially with like you mentioned earlier with Austin Riley. He's starting to hit the ball well, and Ronald Acuna had a 3 for 4 in that Dodger series as well. Just little bright spots that you got to pay attention to because baseball is super long.
Mhm.
And as far as Bryce Elder goes, I'm not too concerned. Like I'm really excited about what AJ Smith-Sharp has been doing down in AAA. So if that is the option they have to go to, I wouldn't be too upset about it.
When we come back, we'll talk about how one guy is maybe putting in enough work to erase the memory of another and going deep. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by DoorDash and eBay Motors. 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order. That can be done if you check out DoorDash. Now, Mom's Day is right around the corner. Sure, you want to make her smile. You can do that with flowers, or you can surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, and you can get it delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Moms, of course, are a gift to all of us, so you want to give her the very best that you can. Be thoughtful with DoorDash. You can select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more. Again, delivered right to her front door. So this Mother's Day, get something thoughtful, surprise her, also with some self-care treats or more to make her day that much better. It's never too late to show your mom love this Mother's Day with DoorDash. And maybe if she has a sweet tooth, maybe if she's a beauty connoisseur, maybe even that rare mom that's probably outdoorsy, any of it is something that can be done with DoorDash. How do you get it done? Well, you can get it done all in one place by getting 50% off your very next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now by using the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB. Now, you can order from DoorDash today, and terms do apply, but who wouldn't want to use that code LOCKEDONMLB? Get $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flour order, your next convenience order, your next grocery order by using DoorDash. Again, terms do apply, but order by using DoorDash today. And of course, our episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. We've talked about passion. The Braves got it. We talked about drive. They were able to drive in 4 runs last night. And of course, patience is a virtue because we are only at May 8th and we're only 34 games into the season. As of today, no fear, because they're going to show you that they are champions just like eBay shows they are. Everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. 122 million parts for your ride or die. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or die every time, or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're spending rubber, or burning rubber rather, and not cash.
And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items apply only. Exclusions apply. And eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Now, before we talk about Jarred Kelenic and what he was able to do in Tuesday night's game, let's kind of run it back to a year ago. A little over a year removed from Dansby Swanson, taking his talents to the Midwest. And one reason we haven't maybe had to bring him up is because of the play of Orlando Arcia. Jarvis, listen to me. We'll talk about Jarred in a minute, but first Jarvis is going to talk about Arcia and maybe what you think he's been able to do to maybe, dare we say, get Braves fans to forget about their hometown hero.
Yeah, when you think about what he's been able to do, like we know what he did at the plate last year, right? Going into the All-Star break, he was hitting 330, had a 900 OPS in mid-June, and he ended up being voted into the All-Star game, right? So that was a pretty big deal for him to be able to do that, being that he had become a utility player in his last few years with the Milwaukee Brewers. So I feel like also. Now, granted, take out the hometown connection, right? Because obviously it's kind of hard to combat against that. But when you just start looking at the numbers this year defensively, because we know Dansby was excellent, defensive shortstop, right? He had two Gold Gloves, probably should have had one more when he was with the Braves. But I think that when you start hearing Orlando's teammates talking about, hey, he's playing on a Gold Glove type level, and former shortstop himself, Walt Weiss, who works with the infield, he's talking about how excellent he's been playing and how he's kind of stepped his game up defensively. That's why I feel like you're going to start trying to forget about Dansby Swanson. Well, we haven't heard anybody talking about Dansby, because of just what he's been able to do on the field on the defensive side, or being one of the best defensive infields in I was about to say NBA, Major League Baseball.
Right. And I think too, one of the things that is so, I don't want to say encouraging, but I think it gives you a sense of relief, right? Like the Braves never needed Orlando Arcia to be all world. They just needed him to be solid at the shortstop position. And yet all world is what you got. Like you said, batting 330 with nearly 900 OPS in mid-June. That's pretty significant based on what not just Dansby Swanson was able to do, but that continued possibility for what he could be, because you knew he had all the capabilities and all the possibilities to be all world. But I think to that point, the Braves are kind of that team where there are certain players like a Ronald Acuna Jr., as an example, who can be all world, and you need him to be. You need him to be all world in the outfield, and you need him to be all world at the plate. But there are a lot of positions, particularly where Orlando Arcia is, where, again, all you needed him to do was just be solid. Just don't make any mistakes. Just be that solid guy. And Jarvis, not just Dansby Swanson, but, might you throw in there as well, because that was obviously the conversation that we kind of heard last night. And again, we're kind of talking a little bit more about Dansby Swanson, but we can't forget about the conversation around Vaughn Grissom and, the shiny new toy. And everybody was like, oh, the Braves let go of the shiny new toy.
Yes.
So,
yes.
there was some trauma around that piece as well. But Vaughn Grissom talked about how, he understood. And I bring Vaughn Grissom into the conversation as an example of a vision that oftentimes Alex Anthopoulos has that none of the rest of us have. Like, we can't quite see what he can see down the road. But again, all he needed Orlando Arcia to do was be solid. He didn't need anybody otherworldly like a Dansby Swanson could have been. And he was okay with the shiny new toy. But even the shiny new toy admitted that he could have done a little bit better with the opportunity that he was given. So I think when you look at all of those pieces of the puzzle, and then Orlando Arcia saying, I'm not going to just sit and average performance isn't going to be acceptable to me. I'm going to try to step up my game defensively. I think it's worked out well. And I think that's why we're not having as much conversation as maybe we thought, or Jarvis, dare I say, as much hangover as we had maybe from when Freddie Freeman parted ways with the team.
Absolutely. And it kind of gives you a peek into the mind of Alex Anthopoulos, right? Because not only did he beat out Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake, because there was a lot of
Brady
he
Shoemake
was
as
part of
well.
that conversation too, right? He not only won the battle, right, for shortstop, but Alex Anthopoulos went out and gave him a 3-year deal for $7.3 million, which is looking like an absolute
Steal.
bank
Oh my
robbery
God,
right now.
bribery. Yeah, it's robbery. It always is.
Right. You know, I was like, oh man, that's great value. But I'm up here sitting, if I was Orlando's agent, I was like, sir, we're gonna have to renegotiate this at some point. But I think overall it just lets you know that, you know, hey, that was conviction there. Not only did he win it then, and then, hey, but there's a potential that he can probably come up, you know, if Orlando starts to struggle. No, he said, I'm gonna give this man a 3-year deal, which is not that long in baseball. You know, like guys are normally used to getting 10-year deals, you know, if you want them to be around for that long.
Right.
But you also, that shiny toy, hey, shiny toy, we about to send you to Boston. And we're about to get Chris Sale. And how has Chris Sale looked this year? He's been pretty doggone solid. So I think that, you know, when you dig into the mind of Alex Anthopoulos, as far as when he makes these decisions and what, you know, like the consequences of those decisions, like what they reap from that, like it just really starts to add up. And you're just like, man, this man knows exactly what he's doing. They got my Alex Anthopoulos love for the day.
Right.
You know, it just makes you just understand how, when it comes to roster construction and certain decisions you have to make. Not saying it was easy, but it lets you understand that, hey, this dude has a vision for where they're going. And Orlando Arcia is definitely a guy who has benefited from it.
Yeah, and that's also why we could have the conversation about not being overly concerned or overly stressed out, even after what we saw with that West Coast trip, because it's May 8th. We haven't even gotten to Memorial Day. Grant talked about it before. We haven't gotten to June, and that trade deadline is a long way away. And so these kinds of, going back to these examples, Arcia being a perfect example of how Alex Anthopoulos can weave in the different pieces here and there to make the puzzle kind of fit together. It's a great example of why we're not as concerned or maybe panicking as maybe other teams might be if they found themselves in the same situation as these Braves. And another reason is because, Jarvis, how many times have we had a conversation about that guy stepping up out of nowhere and making things happen, or stepping back up? Last night we saw Marcell Ozuna step back up and give the Braves the opportunity to win. And last night we saw Jarred Kelenic step up, at least at the plate, because he's been doing his thing defensively in the outfield. But we saw him step up at the plate last night and give the Braves an opportunity to put a run on the board with his first home run of the night. How good was it to see Jarred Kelenic get that home run out of the way and really see he's starting to settle in slowly but surely each and every game that he's with these Braves, and that he's been a nice addition, a nice piece for this team too.
It's the perfect role for him, because when you think about how he was on a tear before he kicked the water cooler or whatever it was, and he messed up his foot and was down for a minute, and he came back and he struggled tremendously. So for a guy to come in with no pressure, and I kind of liken it to, you know, Michael Harris, like when he got penciled in at the 9 hole, it's just like, hey man, look, you come in here, you do your thing and try to do your best, because, you know, these other 8 guys, they pretty much got everything going on. So no pressure, no pressure at all. So I think for him to come in and, like, you didn't hear stories being written, why is he not hitting the ball out the park? You know, this dude's supposed to be a power hitter or nothing. Like, you didn't hear any of that, because you got so many other guys up and down that lineup that are, like you said, the expectations are much, much higher. So you're not really expecting that much from him. And he's been giving you, like, I feel like some plus defender type play out in the outfield. So I feel like if he can kind of just sell into his role, like Michael Harris started off doing in that 9 hole, no pressure whatsoever, and then eventually he can work on his game, and then, you know, this may be one of those deals that that can kind of propel him to be able to, you know, start getting that power, start getting some more pop in his bat. And I was, you know, reading that, you know, well, what Chipper Jones was talking about on the broadcast, as far as how he's been working with him and how, you know, it's so crazy how Chipper Jones can, moonlight as a consultant for the Braves. Yeah, let me talk to Chipper for a second. I've been struggling for a little bit, so yeah. But yeah, I think overall it's really cool to see him come in, with no expectations as far as pressure coming in, as far as being in that 9 hole from at the plate, and just start to see him just progress because this man was batting 143 in spring training. People, everybody was losing their doggone minds back then, so it's good to see it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You want to talk about somebody that could just be a jack of all trades and show you everything. And we're going to talk about this down the road, but that darn Chipper Jones, you can come in as a consultant. You're a Hall of Famer. You're going to be on the broadcast for the Braves. I mean, you can just do everything. But hey, that's a Brave for you. Braves can do it all. Speaking of the Braves being able to do it all, can they do it all without one guy who's been pretty solid for them in showing an abundance of caution? We'll talk about it in this stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by PrizePicks. Now, baseball season is officially underway, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. You can also get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. So PrizePicks is something for every sports fan, from baseball and basketball to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick up Anthony Edwards, Shohei Ohtani, all in the same entry. It's the best way to get action in on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and right here in GA. Want to play alongside some of the PrizePicks favorites? You can now also find community plays under the promo tabs of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's LOCKEDONMLB. Using that promo code, you can do so for a first deposit match up to $100. Don't forget, download the PrizePicks app today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, Jarvis, again, put on our be Alex Anthopoulos. We put on our Brian Snicker hats, but we know we can't really be snit either in the decisions that they make, like the decision to put Tyler Matzek on the 15-day IL with left elbow inflammation. For you, Jarvis, was that a move where the Braves are just moving in an abundance of caution, or do you think there's cause for concern here?
I mean, I know Snicker, he never gets concerned about anything. Because when you think about him coming, you kind of get it when he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, and and he was out last year. So instead of trying to be the guy to try to quote unquote tough it out, you go, try to get some treatment and try to get this thing and try to get back on track. Because I mean, to be honest with you, Tyler Matzek was struggling. You're talking about 11 runs in 10 innings? Yeah, with an ERA of 9.9? Yeah, that's not good. And I think, the 33-year-old, being 33 years old, and, and just the nostalgia that comes with Tyler Matzek back in from what we were able to see in 2021 in the World Series, and how integral he was to, being able to pull that bad boy off. It's kind of hard to see. That's why I get concerned, because of what he's done for this team in the past. So for me, I get a little concerned. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little concerned because I don't know if we'll ever see that guy, right? I don't know if we'll ever see that guy, come back and be who the leader of the night shift, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think for me, I would say, if I look at it from your lens, you're absolutely right. There's a little bit of a concern there on whether or not you're ever going to see that Tyler again. But the reason I'm not concerned is because of the conversation we've had this entire show, and really so far the entirety of the season, which is the amazing collective play of the bullpen. And that's why I think that ultimately I'm okay with an abundance of caution, especially this early in the season, If you feel like you need to put him on the IL, the 15-day IL, at least it's not the 60-day. So I think that's actually something that's encouraging too. But also for me, it's primarily the play of the bullpen that says, hey, I hope that Tyler Matzek is going to be okay. But the play holistically makes me confident that the Braves are going to be okay. Other play that makes me confident that we're going to be just fine, that the Braves are going to be fine as a team, is the play of Chris Sale. My God. Like, yeah, you can say he might have a little extra juice when he takes the mound against the Red Sox because it's his former team. I don't really think dude needs any extra juice as far as what we've been able to see from him so far this season. I mean, he's 4-1. He's tied for 7th in the majors with that record. 42 strikeouts, a .95 whip, which is top 10 in the league. I mean, he's already, if we're being honest, because you didn't know what you were going to get with such an injury history over the last 4 to 5 years, he's already exceeded expectations. So I don't think he needs any more juice or anything to kind of get him going, even if it is against his old team. But hey, never hurts for you to look back and say, well, I got something for you to remind you of what you're missing.
Yeah, when you think about what he's been able to bring to the table, you talking about a guy who's gone 7 innings 3 times, and just that is, and a guy who's been dealing with so many injuries. And now, granted, Chris Sale doesn't have any ill will towards Boston. He appreciated his time because he was absolutely ridiculous when he was up there with them, and he won a World Series back in 2018. So when you have those type of scenarios playing out, and I think maybe he gets emotional, but from what I hear about Chris Sale, he that type of guy. He got a little bulldog in him, if I can use that term. So, but for me, I just been amazed at watching him pitch. Just from the breaking ball and standpoint, that being like his main type go-to or whatever, and just seeing how guys have just looked bad when you talking about swinging and missing, that whiff factor. Yeah, it's up. It's up when it comes to Chris Sale. So for him, I just love watching him pitch. So yeah, even if he there was one time when he went 7 innings, like he gave up like 5 runs, against the
against the Marlins.
Against the Marlins. Yep, against the Marlins. So that's something that you just kind of look at and say, okay, even though he kind of struggled, but he was able to stick it out, and, and try and work his way through it. So those are the type of things that you kind of look for when, October rolls around, a guy who can, work through those things and not, exhaust your bullpen.
Yeah. And I think too, if you're going to get tagged rather for 5 earned runs, at least let me also see you get 7 strikeouts, because that speaks to, like you said, being able to still find your command and being able to reset. And like you said, buy your way out of a jam, which will be very, very important down the stretch. And can't reiterate enough, every time you go past 5 innings, that's something that speaks volumes about the bullpen. But we also know that Brian Snitker is watching and making sure that he's working it in a way that works for Chris Sale, because they are going to need him down the stretch indeed. Thanks for stopping by the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves talk. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you tomorrow on the Atlanta Sports Party.